On my son's 10th birthday, I exposed my husband's baby swap with his first love, proved Jacob is mine, reclaimed our company, welcomed Charlotte, and ended their scheme, choosing truth, law, and family over them now. 10 years later, I transferred all my assets to my son, Jacob, as a birthday gift. That's when Amanda crashed the party, smiling smugly. The son you've cherished for 10 years is actually mine, she said. Jacob had just received the asset transfer agreement when she barged in, tears streaming as she rushed to hug him. He stepped back in shock. The people Amanda brought along watched with curiosity. I turned to my husband, Greg. Greg, care to explain? Jacob stood beside me, looking unimpressed. Though only 10, he had witnessed Greg cheating with Amanda 2 years earlier and had told me everything. Since then, he knew Greg didn't care about us. Amanda tried to hug him again. Jacob, let me give you a hug. I can finally claim you as mine. Jacob stepped back, cold and firm. You're not my mom. My mom is Rachel Weiss. I smiled, proud of how calm and strong he was. Amanda stumbled and fell. Greg helped her up, then turned on me. Rachel, how could you do this to Amanda? I slapped them both. Amanda is a mistress. She has no right to be here. And Greg, why would you invite her on Jacob's birthday? Greg stood, scowling, and raised his hand. But Jacob jumped between us, shielding me. Don't hit my mom. Though no match for Greg's strength, he rammed into his stomach, knocking him down. As Amanda fell with him, Greg's fury boiled. He tried to kick Jacob, but Amanda stopped him. Calm down, Greg. Jacob is our son. Greg glared at Jacob. How dare you hit me? You're nothing but a troublemaker. Rachel must have raised you wrong. Jacob didn't budge. Real men don't hit women, and cheating on mom was wrong. One of our older relatives, Timothy Weiss, silenced the room with a tap of his walking stick. What's going on? He demanded. Greg and Amanda exchanged a look. Greg stepped forward. Since everyone's here, I have an announcement. Jacob isn't Rachel's son. Gasps filled the room. Jacob trembled. I gently pulled him close. Greg continued, Rachel and Amanda gave birth the same day. I visited Amanda with Rachel's baby and accidentally switched them. He pretended to look remorseful, expecting me to react. I didn't. I calmly sipped my coffee. Amanda is Jacob's biological mother. Rachel gave birth to a daughter. Some guests murmured in agreement, parroting Greg's setup. A daughter can't inherit the Weiss group. Rachel should step down. I scanned their faces, Greg's planted supporters. Jacob gripped my shirt. I comforted him and turned to Greg. Did you really think I couldn't tell my own child? Jacob is my son. He'll never call anyone else mom. Jacob's panic faded as he leaned into me. Amanda began to cry. Rachel, stop lying. Jacob is my son. She thought I didn't know, but I knew everything. 10 years ago, my father forced me to leave my first love, Derek Stark, because he was poor. After my father's death, I married Greg, who had long pursued me. During wedding preparations, I discovered his affair with Amanda. I realized he was marrying me for money. On our wedding night, I made him drink until he passed out, letting him believe we consummated the marriage. He later switched our baby with Amanda's, unaware I had already switched them back. What he didn't know was that I had been 4 weeks pregnant with Derek's child. For 10 years, I raised Jacob with love. Greg unknowingly raised a child that wasn't his. He thought he'd outsmarted me, but he was the fool. Rachel, Greg said smugly, there's been a swap. Jacob's not your son. Let's get a DNA test. He demanded a divorce, hoping to marry Amanda and control the Weiss group through Jacob. I smiled coldly. Fine, let's divorce, but forget the DNA test. Jacob is mine. Jacob held my hand. Mom, I believe you. I look just like you. Greg and Amanda paled. Greg tried to pull Jacob into a hug. Son, why don't you trust me? Jacob shoved him away and ran back to me. Mom. Just then, a girl burst in and ran to me. Mom, I'm Charlotte Weiss. I'm your daughter. Gasps filled the room. Charlotte's dry, dull hair and frail body told a story of neglect. Amanda had abused her own child, thinking she was mine. Charlotte clung to me, sobbing. I missed you, Mom. You're my mom, right? Timothy stepped in again. Greg, who is this girl? Nodding, Greg answered, this is Rachel's daughter. She's been weak from a young age and is always sick. We can never nurse her back to health. Silence filled the living room. I had my doubts. Perhaps Charlotte wasn't born a sick child as they claimed. She was sick because of Amanda's deliberate neglect. Charlotte refused to let go of my hand. Her face was streaked with tears. Mom, I miss you so much. You're my mom. Mom, aren't you? I knelt to Charlotte's level, gently brushing a strand of brittle hair from her face. Her eyes, frightened and pleading, searched mine for recognition. I looked at her tenderly, the way I'd look at any child in pain, but there was no maternal bond. And yet, I felt something rise in my chest, not biology, not guilt, but justice. Sweetheart, I said softly, do you remember who raised you? She blinked. Miss Amanda. But she always told me not to speak unless spoken to. And when I got sick, she said it was because I was cursed. Her voice cracked, the weight of years pressing down on those few words. A hush fell over the room. Amanda's face turned pale, then red. I never said that. She's confused. Children misunderstand things. But I cut in coldly. No, Amanda. She didn't misunderstand. You did. You thought you could torment the daughter you thought was mine while you cradled Jacob like a trophy. You played house with someone else's son, hoping to cash in. Greg scoffed. Stop trying to twist things, Rachel. You're making a fool of yourself. Timothy's voice rang out, sharp and clear. Enough. I want DNA tests for Jacob, for Charlotte, for all of them. This house won't become a circus of lies. The guests murmured in agreement. I stood tall, steady. Fine. Let's have those tests. I've got nothing to hide. Greg's confident smirk faltered. Within 24 hours, samples were collected. The next day, I received the results before anyone else. I read them alone in my office at Weiss Group, my fingers trembling, not from fear, but anticipation. When I saw the confirmation, I allowed myself a rare smile. Back at the house, the family had gathered once more. Amanda looked hopeful, Greg smug. I walked into the room holding the manila envelope. I placed it on the table like a final move in chess. Here, I said. Why don't you read them, Greg? He grabbed the envelope greedily, tearing it open. The room watched him in silence as he skimmed the document. Then his hands began to shake. Amanda leaned over. What does it say? Greg's lips trembled. It says Jacob. Jacob is Rachel's biological son. Amanda gasped. No, that can't be. And Charlotte? Timothy asked. Greg's voice was hollow. She's not Rachel's. She's ours. Amanda let out a shrill cry, stumbling back. No. There must be a mistake. But I stepped forward, laying another envelope on the table. And just in case you thought I forged it, I ordered the test from 2 independent labs. Same results. Greg's face was the very definition of defeat. Amanda was trembling, tears flowing freely. I turned to Jacob, who had remained silent through it all. You always knew, didn't you? Jacob nodded. I knew in my heart. You're my mom. I turned to Charlotte then. And you, my dear, I said gently, I may not be your birth mother, but you've suffered because of someone else's scheme. If you want, you can stay here until we figure everything out. Charlotte looked up at me, eyes shining. Really? Yes. We take care of those who've been hurt. Greg exploded. You can't do this. She's my daughter. Timothy slammed his walking stick once more. Greg, you're not in charge anymore. And as for Weiss Group, Rachel has full authority now that she's transferred her shares. But enough, Timothy's voice was final. I stepped closer to Greg, my voice low but firm. You lost. You tried to rewrite fate, but you forgot one thing. I never stopped watching. And now I'm taking back everything. Amanda collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Greg just stood there, shattered. And me? I held Jacob's hand and walked out of that room, stronger, freer, and ready for what was next. The courtroom smelled like old wood and tension. Light filtered through the high windows, casting pale shadows on the floor. I sat with Jacob beside me, his small hand wrapped around mine. Charlotte sat a few rows behind us, quietly sketching in a worn notebook I had given her. She'd refused to go back with Amanda after what happened, and I wasn't going to force her. Greg and Amanda sat on the other side, smug but nervous. Amanda wore a conservative blazer, like she thought dressing the part would hide her guilt. Greg, still clinging to whatever shred of dignity he had left, refused to look at me. The judge, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and no time for theatrics, entered. Court is now in session. This wasn't just about custody. It was about power, about legacy, about exposing the full extent of Greg and Amanda's deception. I had filed for divorce, for sole custody of Jacob, and had launched an inquiry into fraud and child endangerment. And now the moment had arrived. Amanda's lawyer was the first to speak. Your Honor, my client simply wishes to reclaim her biological child. She had no idea of the switch until recently and believes young Jacob deserves to know his true mother. I stood up calmly when my turn came. Your Honor, may I present evidence? I handed over a neatly organized folder. Inside were copies of both DNA tests, financial records showing Amanda siphoned money from accounts Greg had access to, and even a statement from the nurse who had been bribed 10 years ago, who, racked with guilt, had come forward last week. The judge's brows furrowed as she flipped through the documents. You're saying this was a coordinated plan between Mr. Martin and Miss Larkin to swap the babies intentionally? Yes, Your Honor, I replied. But what they didn't count on was me switching them back before they left the hospital. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Amanda stood up, red-faced. She's lying. This is all fabricated. Sit down, Miss Larkin, the judge ordered sternly. We'll hear your rebuttal after Ms. Weiss finishes. I continued, unshaken. They thought they could raise my son under my roof, steal my company through him, and discard me. But they underestimated a mother's instinct and my preparation. The judge turned to Amanda's lawyer. Do you have anything further? The man looked at Amanda, then back at the judge. No, Your Honor. When it was Greg's turn, his lawyer tried to pivot. Mr. Martin may have made emotional mistakes, but he has been a present father to Jacob. Jacob suddenly stood up. No, he hasn't. All heads turned. I saw him cheat on my mom. I saw him lie. He only played dad because he thought I was someone else's kid. I don't want to live with him. I don't trust him. The judge's gaze softened just slightly as she looked at Jacob. Thank you for your honesty. After reviewing everything, the judge leaned back and took a deep breath. Here is my ruling. Miss Rachel Weiss will retain full legal custody of Jacob Weiss. The court recognizes that Jacob is both biologically and emotionally her child. Mr. Martin's parental rights are hereby revoked due to fraud, abuse, and endangerment. Additionally, Miss Amanda Larkin's petition is denied. She continued, voice steady. Furthermore, I am opening a separate investigation into financial fraud involving Mr. Martin and Miss Larkin. Until this is resolved, neither of them may contact Jacob or Miss Weiss without court approval. The gavel struck once. Court adjourned. Amanda broke down in tears. Greg tried to speak, but his lawyer grabbed his arm, whispering something. I didn't care. I had Jacob, and now the law backed us, too. As we stepped out into the sunlight, reporters swarmed, shouting questions. I ignored them, shielding Jacob with my body. Charlotte ran up to us and took my hand. I looked down at her. You still want to stay with us? She nodded fiercely. You're the only one who ever protected me. I smiled. Then welcome home. The week after the court ruling passed in a blur. Amanda and Greg had gone quiet. No more threats. No more surprise visits. But I knew better than to believe the silence meant peace. People like them don't go down without plotting something else. I was at Weiss Group headquarters when the next blow came. Miss Weiss, my assistant said, holding out a thick envelope, her expression uneasy. This was delivered by courier. It's from Gregory Martin's attorney. I took it without flinching, already guessing what it was. Inside was a formal letter. Greg was challenging the validity of the asset transfer to Jacob. He was trying to claim that I had mentally manipulated a minor into accepting ownership of shares, that I was using a child to maintain control of the company. And the worst part, he was petitioning for an emergency board review to freeze Jacob's assets and suspend my authority as interim CEO until the matter was investigated. I closed the file slowly, letting the rage simmer, but not erupt. This was it. The war he wanted, he would have it, but not on his terms. That evening, I met with my lawyer, Felicia Grant, a woman known for her brutal efficiency and unshakable calm. He's grasping, Felicia said, flipping through the documents. But Weiss Group's board has always been conservative. Some of them may side with him out of fear or ambition. I already knew who she meant, the older male board members, loyal to my father's memory, but resentful that I, a woman, was carrying his legacy forward. I want to call an emergency board meeting before he does, I said. If he wants war, he'll get a public one. 3 days later, the Weiss Group boardroom was full. All 13 members were seated. Greg entered with Amanda at his side, acting like they still had a place in this company. Amanda wore a pearl-studded blazer and a smirk that didn't reach her eyes. I'm surprised you had the nerve to show up, Rachel, Greg said as he sat. I returned his stare. You shouldn't be. I'm exactly where I belong. Timothy Weiss, seated at the head of the table, cleared his throat. Let's proceed. Greg launched his attack. He painted me as a manipulative mother, one who transferred company assets to a child as a shield against losing power. Amanda backed him up with trembling hands and a fake tear, claiming I was weaponizing children. Then it was my turn. I have here, I said, holding up a document, a copy of the latest corporate will for my late father, signed and sealed 2 weeks before his death. In it, he named me as the sole successor of Weiss Group, with the freedom to appoint any successor at my discretion. Murmurs filled the room. And let me be clear, I added, the asset transfer to Jacob was symbolic, a vote of confidence in the next generation. He doesn't control the company. I do, and I'm not stepping down. Amanda rose. This is absurd. That will was never made public. Because it didn't have to be until now, I said, sliding certified copies to each board member. Timothy examined his copy and nodded. Everything seems in order. But I wasn't done. I stood and walked to the large monitor on the wall. Now, let's talk about who really shouldn't be here. I clicked a remote. Images appeared, wire transfers from Greg to shell accounts in Amanda's name, financial trails, unauthorized spending, company property listed as miscellaneous personal expenses. Greg Martin embezzled over $500,000 over the last 6 years. And Amanda Larkin benefited from every cent. Silence. Amanda turned pale. Greg jumped up. She's lying. This is fake. Timothy slammed his hand on the table. Enough. He turned to the other members. I motion that we permanently revoke Gregory Martin's board privileges and file charges for corporate theft. All in favor? I asked one by one. The hands went up, even the doubters. All opposed? No one moved. Greg slumped back into his chair, defeated. Amanda burst into tears as security escorted them from the building. Jacob stood outside the boardroom doors with Charlotte. Is it over? He asked. Almost, I said. But the Weiss name, it's safe and yours to shape someday. I looked down at them, two children who had been lied to, used, and hurt. Now they had me, and together we would rebuild something better. It was a quiet morning when the first letter arrived. No courier, no return address, just a white envelope slipped beneath the front door. Jacob was upstairs doing his homework, and Charlotte was helping our housekeeper fold laundry. I picked up the envelope and opened it slowly, my instincts already on alert. Inside was a photograph, black and white, faded at the edges, but unmistakable. Derek Stark, my first love, standing in front of a modest grocery store with a little boy, no older than Jacob, beside him. And on the back of the photo, a note in handwriting I hadn't seen in over a decade. You lied to both of us. You took everything. I'm back. My fingers tightened around the edges of the photo. The past I thought I had buried with pain and silence was clawing its way back into the present. I sat down, breathing slowly. This wasn't just about Greg and Amanda anymore. Derek, Jacob's biological father, was alive, and worse, he knew about me. About Jacob? Maybe even about the marriage to Greg. I locked the envelope in my desk drawer. I wasn't ready to tell Jacob, not yet. That night, I found Charlotte curled up with a book in the hallway. She looked up as I passed. Is something wrong, Mom? She asked. I paused. She was so intuitive, so sharp, even after everything she'd been through. I knelt beside her. Nothing you need to worry about right now. She nodded, but her eyes searched mine. Okay, just don't keep everything inside. I kissed her forehead. I'll try. The next day, the second letter arrived. This time, it came with a burned CD, a note attached in the same handwriting, play me. I think Jacob deserves to know who I am. My hand shook as I inserted the disc into my laptop. Static, then a voice, older, raspier, but unmistakably Derek's. Rachel, if you're watching this, it means I couldn't get to you in person first. I don't want to cause problems. I just want the truth. I want to know why you never told me that I had a son. He paused. I searched for you after your father died, but you vanished. I had nothing, no address, no number. I found out about the Weiss family fortune in the papers. I figured you had moved on. I stayed away. But then I saw Jacob's picture on a charity brochure last year, and I knew he's mine. You know he is. The screen went black. I closed the laptop and pressed my palms to my eyes. The truth was surfacing faster than I could contain it. Derek wanted answers, maybe even rights. And I couldn't deny that part of me still remembered him, not just the love, but the pain of losing him under my father's pressure. I had buried that chapter. Now it was writing itself back into our lives. 3 nights later, I heard a knock on the door. Jacob answered it before I could stop him. There in the entryway stood Derek Stark, a little older, face weathered, eyes intense. His gaze shifted from Jacob to me and back again. Hi, he said quietly. I think we need to talk. Jacob looked confused. Who are you? Derek didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at me, asking silently for permission. I stepped forward, placing a hand on Jacob's shoulder. This is Derek, an old friend. Derek's eyes glistened. Hi, Jacob. You've grown up strong, just like your mom. Jacob looked between us, sensing something unspoken. And in that moment, I knew this was going to change everything. Jacob's eyes narrowed as he looked between me and Derek. Wait, how do you know me? His voice was cautious, but his mind was racing. He wasn't a child who accepted vague answers anymore. I exhaled. Jacob, come sit with us. There's something I need to tell you, something I should have told you long ago. We sat down in the living room, Derek on one end of the couch, Jacob in the middle, and me on the other. The silence felt heavier than any courtroom, any boardroom, any moment we'd faced before. Jacob, I began slowly, you know Greg isn't your real father. He nodded. Yeah, I figured that out a long time ago. I glanced at Derek, then back at my son. This man sitting beside you is your biological father. Jacob froze. His mouth opened, then closed again. He turned to Derek, studying his face as if trying to find pieces of himself in it. Why didn't you ever come for me? He finally asked, his voice tight. Derek leaned forward. I didn't know you existed, Jacob. Your grandfather forced your mother and me to break up. After that, I lost all contact. I didn't even know she was pregnant. When I saw your photo last year, I started searching. Jacob looked back at me. And you never told him? No, I said honestly, because I was scared. I was trying to protect you from the chaos that surrounded your birth, your father, everything. I didn't know if bringing him back into your life would hurt you more than help you. Jacob went quiet. So, my whole life has been lies. No, Derek said firmly. The love your mom gave you, the way she raised you, that's real. And now that I know about you, I'm not going anywhere unless you want me to. Jacob looked away, blinking fast. I don't know how to feel right now. I understand, I said softly. Take your time. We're not rushing anything. Over the next week, Derek didn't push. He stayed nearby, never pressuring Jacob for time. Instead, he started joining us for quiet dinners, small moments. And slowly, Jacob began asking questions, about his childhood, about Derek's life, about why everything had gone so wrong. But it wasn't just Jacob who was watching. Charlotte, too, had begun to feel the tension. One night, after Derek had left, she sat beside me in the kitchen. If he's Jacob's dad, does that mean you won't have time for me anymore? I froze. Charlotte, look at me. She did, wide-eyed and vulnerable. I chose to keep you here because I see your worth. You are brave, smart, kind. Nothing about Derek changes what I feel for you. You are part of this family now, and you always will be. She nodded slowly, then hugged me tightly. I don't want to lose you, too. Just when things began to feel like they might settle, a headline shattered our fragile calm. Greg Martin accuses Weiss Group of fraud, claims Jacob is not Rachel's son after all. I dropped the paper on the kitchen counter. Greg had filed a second lawsuit. This time, he claimed I had orchestrated the entire baby swap years ago to steal Amanda's child and secure an heir, calling the DNA results doctored and citing Derek's sudden return as suspicious. He was trying to use the truth I had hidden against me. Felicia called minutes later. We're going to court again. He's trying to paint you as unstable, manipulative, and dangerous. And Jacob? I asked. They're asking the court to place him in temporary foster care until the matter is resolved. My blood ran cold. He wasn't just attacking my name now. He was attacking my child. And I would burn everything to the ground before I let that happen. The courthouse was colder than usual, not because of the weather, but because this time I wasn't just defending my rights as a mother. I was fighting for Jacob's very future. The courtroom was packed with reporters, Weiss Group board members, and even former clients, all curious to witness the next scandal unfold. Greg sat across from me, smug and polished, Amanda at his side with crocodile tears at the ready. Their attorney began with rehearsed confidence. Your Honor, we are petitioning for the immediate removal of Jacob Weiss from Miss Rachel Weiss's care pending investigation. We believe she manipulated DNA tests, withheld biological paternity information, and has created an unstable, deceptive household. The judge turned to me. Ms. Weiss? I stood slowly, my heels echoing in the silence. Your Honor, this isn't about Jacob's well-being. This is about power. Greg Martin is furious he no longer controls my son or my company. But if this court is truly concerned with Jacob's safety, then I welcome a full investigation. I have nothing to hide. Felicia handed over a new folder of documents to the judge. We've acquired sworn statements from hospital staff, a secondary DNA test conducted independently by the court, and financial records showing Greg and Amanda's pattern of manipulation, bribery, and abuse. The judge flipped through the papers. Amanda began sobbing louder. Greg tried to interrupt. She's twisting this entire narrative. She never even told the boy who his real father is. I didn't flinch. That's true. And it's the only thing I regret. But my silence wasn't for control. It was for protection, something you clearly never understood, Greg. The courtroom fell silent. Then the judge spoke. Jacob Weiss will remain in the custody of Rachel Weiss. The court finds no evidence of endangerment, coercion, or fraud. The petition for removal is denied. Furthermore, Greg Martin and Amanda Larkin will face charges for perjury and obstruction if they continue presenting falsified accusations. Amanda crumbled. Greg's jaw tightened in fury. But I wasn't done. Your Honor, I added, stepping forward, I have one final request. The judge raised an eyebrow. Go on. I'd like the court's assistance in establishing full legal recognition of Derek Stark as Jacob's biological father, should both parties agree. Gasps rippled through the room. Greg lost it. You can't do that. He wasn't even there for the boy's life. Derek, who had remained silent until now, stood calmly. And yet, I've never tried to take anything from him. I just want to be there if he'll let me. No lies, no leverage, just truth. The judge looked at Jacob. And what do you want, young man? Jacob stood, his voice steady. I want my mom, and I want to get to know my real dad. But I don't ever want to see Greg Martin again. That was it. The gavel hit the desk. Petition approved. Case closed. Outside the courthouse, the press swarmed. Flashbulbs popped. Microphones pressed forward. Miss Weiss, are you planning to press charges against Greg and Amanda for attempted custody fraud? I looked straight into the cameras. I'm planning to rebuild with truth and to never let anyone use my children to gain power again. I held Jacob's hand. Charlotte joined us, and Derek stood quietly behind, respectful but present. The fire they lit to burn me down, I had walked through it and emerged holding my family. The morning after the trial, a strange stillness hung in the air, not peace, just the eerie calm that follows destruction. The legal storm was over. Greg and Amanda had fallen. But when empires crumble, they leave behind debris. And some of that debris still had my name on it. Jacob was at school, Charlotte at art therapy. Derek had taken to visiting only when invited, giving a space but never disappearing. He had proven himself patient, loyal, quietly protective. The man I once loved still lived behind his older, wearier eyes. I was in my father's old study at Weiss Group. His scent still lingered on the leather armchair, the edges of his framed photos. I opened the locked drawer where he kept his private documents, and there it was, a second will, signed and dated 3 days before his death. I had never seen this version. In it, he didn't just name me as the heir. He also named Jacob by name, which meant he knew. My breath caught. He knew Jacob was Derek's son, and he chose to protect that truth until the very end. There was a letter attached. Rachel, I made a terrible mistake forcing you to leave Derek. I thought I was protecting our family name, our legacy. But I see now legacy means nothing without love. I've watched you raise Jacob with grace and strength. I'm proud of you. I hope one day you'll forgive me. I've ensured Jacob will have everything he needs to carry Weiss into the future, not because he's a boy or because he's a Stark, but because he is yours. With love, your father. Tears slipped down my cheeks, not for the loss, but for the long-delayed validation. I clutched the letter and whispered, "Thank you for finally seeing me." That evening, Timothy Weiss called an emergency board meeting. I received an anonymous tip, he said grimly. Greg's fall left a vacuum, and someone's trying to fill it. Someone on the board. Felicia had warned me the vultures would circle. Who? I asked. Timothy looked around. Elliot Crane. Crane, my father's former protege, always loyal until it became inconvenient. He had been slowly buying small shares through proxy accounts. He's planning a hostile takeover, Timothy said. I nodded. Then let's remind them who owns the fire. The next morning, I released the second will publicly on Weiss Group letterhead through all official channels. The statement was clear: Jacob Weiss, son of Rachel Weiss, is the designated future successor of Weiss Group. Any attempt to undermine this will be met with legal action and immediate expulsion from the board. I made sure to include my father's handwritten signature in the video evidence of him signing it, retrieved from the office security system days before his death. The press exploded. Elliot Crane was exposed. He resigned within hours, and Weiss Group stock soared. That night, as the kids slept and the house fell quiet, Derek and I sat on the balcony, a bottle of red wine between us. You did it, he said softly. No, I replied. We did it, all of us, Jacob, Charlotte, even you. You gave me back something I thought I'd lost forever. He smiled, bittersweet. So, where do we go from here? I looked out over the city. Forward. Always forward. But in the back of my mind, I knew victory always comes with a price. And someone, somewhere, wasn't done watching me. Jacob was different now, still sharp, still kind, but older somehow, like the flames of our battles had forged a boy into something steel-boned. He no longer asked if things would be okay. He watched, listened. He had learned the hard way that truth was rarely simple. And Charlotte, she was blooming, in her drawings, in her words. She was no longer afraid to raise her voice. She wasn't my daughter by blood, but she was family in every way that mattered. We were healing, but peace in my life never came without a warning. One Friday afternoon, as I stepped into the Weiss Group lobby, the receptionist stopped me. Ms. Weiss, she said hesitantly, a man left this for you. He said it was urgent. He wouldn't give his name. Another envelope. My stomach sank. Inside was a single page, typed, no signature, you think you've won. But bloodlines run deeper than paperwork. Jacob Weiss has enemies, and not all of them are outside the family. Tick-tock. I turned the note over. Nothing else. No prints. Clean, professional. Felicia was in my office within the hour. This is a threat, she said. And not just against you. They're targeting Jacob. Who? I asked. She hesitated, then slid a file across my desk. Inside was a name I hadn't spoken in years, Edward Weiss, my father's estranged younger brother, a man cut out of the family trust for gambling, blackmail, and one too many disappearances of company money. The last I heard, he had vanished overseas, leaving nothing but lawsuits and shame in his wake. But now he was back. Felicia nodded. He's been quietly buying shares under fake shell names. The Crane exposure created a window. He's trying to walk back through it. My hands curled into fists. He's coming for Jacob. That night, I sat with Jacob and told him everything, about Edward, about the letter, about the threat. He didn't blink. What do I do? He asked. You stay close. You stay smart. And you let me fight the war, I said. He shook his head. No, Mom. It's my name too now. I want to learn. I studied him, not the little boy from a decade ago, not just my son, but the future of our family. Then we start tomorrow. Within days, Edward's influence started surfacing, a blog accusing me of manipulating the board, a video leak of my courtroom battles with heavily edited audio to paint me as unstable, an anonymous shareholder vote calling to limit my executive powers. But he had made one fatal mistake. He underestimated how much I'd already prepared for this. I called a full shareholder meeting. And this time, Jacob was by my side on stage. He stepped up to the mic with quiet poise. I am Jacob Weiss, and I may only be 11, but I know what honor means. I know what truth costs, and I know my mother never lied, not once. The only mistake this company can make now is giving power to a ghost who never cared about our name until it could be sold. The room went silent. Then, one by one, the votes came in. Motion denied. Edward's proxies rejected. But I knew this wasn't the end. It was his opening shot, and I was ready to end it. The storm broke just after midnight, an emergency alert from the Weiss Group Security Division, unauthorized access attempt. Someone had tried to breach our digital vaults, legal records, asset transfers, internal communications, all of it. Jacob's name was among the targeted files. Within minutes, Felicia, cybersecurity, and Derek were on the line. It was traced to a private server in Macau, Felicia said grimly. Edward Weiss is making his move. He's not just after control anymore, I said. He's trying to erase Jacob's right to the legacy. Derek's voice came through the call, calm but sharp. Let him try. He forgot something. You didn't raise Jacob to be handed anything. You raised him to defend it. The next day, I made a decision. We would face Edward, not in courtrooms, not in boardrooms, but in the public eye. I held a press conference, broadcast live. No legal jargon, no manipulation, just the truth. Standing before the world, I said, my name is Rachel Weiss. I built this company brick by brick, heartache by heartache. I've been betrayed by blood and by marriage, and I have survived. But today, I'm not here to defend myself. I'm here to tell you what legacy really means. It's not stock shares. It's not names on paper. It's truth passed from one generation to the next. My son, Jacob Weiss, is the future of this company, not because of who his father was or who his enemies are, but because he knows the cost of loyalty, dignity, and resilience. Edward Weiss can forge documents. He can spread lies, but he cannot rewrite the bloodline he abandoned decades ago. And as of this morning, he no longer holds a single share in this company. I paused as the final blow landed. All remaining Weiss family shares, my own and Jacob's, have been consolidated into a private family trust, controlled by me, and when he's ready, by Jacob. Edward's era is over. Applause erupted in the room. I didn't smile. This wasn't victory. This was closure. Later that night, I sat with Jacob and Charlotte under the stars on our balcony. Do you think it's over now? Charlotte asked softly. For now, I replied. But peace isn't something you're given. It's something you guard. Jacob leaned against my side. I'm ready to learn how to guard it. I looked at both of them, two children who had been born into chaos, now standing in the calm we had built with fire and grit. You don't have to carry my legacy, I said. You're free to build your own. Jacob smiled.